Okay, good afternoon. We'll get going in just a second. We're a few minutes late, but we did have a guest planned for today. We had some technical difficulties, so we'll move that over. We do have another Board of Ed member scheduled for Thursday. We'll have that, likely one tomorrow as well. So I know people are tuning in for that tonight. There's no Board of Ed member. Yesterday we had Facebook was down. We couldn't get online. We had one scheduled today, but we just tried to connect, and we have some technical issues, so we're going to move that. Kim, how are you? And we will have, Laura Troidel is scheduled for Thursday. And so I have two more to get on here. So we'll figure that out, and we'll make that work and make sure we get everybody on here. I still have to schedule, I believe, Neil on the Democratic side, and I'll do that in the next, probably tonight if I can. Okay. We have a few minutes for people to come on, but good afternoon, Elizabeth. Good afternoon, Kim. Good afternoon. Before we get going into heavier stuff, we'll talk about the tax collector issue. We'll talk about some really amazing letters that were written for political purposes. There's a series of fundraisers I want to get the word out about. And so I want to go through those now because some are time sensitive. So every year we're used to the Garden Club in Brantford doing Scarecrows on the Green. They start October 15th. If you are a business or an organization and wants to do a Scarecrow on the Green, typically you make a donation to the Garden Club. And they do, if you walk around the green, you'll know the work they do. It's pretty evident. There are flowers everywhere. They beautify the green on a regular basis. They do a great job. So we want to support that. If you're a business and want to support that, I put the lights on today. Someone that I am friends with, we were talking about it, and she got to watch it. And I said, you know what, I'll put the lights on. Part of it is because I'm doing the Scarecrows on the Green thing. And I'm like, it's holiday season, right? So let's go with lights. So I have lights. And to everybody who knows my background, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. I'm not used to celebrating holidays. The only time I've ever really celebrated anything is if I happen to be dating somebody at the time of Christmas. And only once in my life have I ever cut down a Christmas tree. And so that's the tabletop one. I kept it up all year. It was kind of a running joke on the podcast to have Christmas, and then it was St. Patrick's Day tree, and then a Valentine's Day tree, whatever it was. So kind of fun. So I decided it's dark out, and we put the lights on today. Anyway, on this fundraiser, if you're a business or an organization and wants to support this, what I'd like to do is help them as well. If you donate $100 to them and put a Scarecrow on, I will make sure I take a picture of that, and we'll share it on Brantford 7 and give you some publicity as well. And to get the word out, $100 or more, please support them. You know the work they do. You've seen the beautifying work they do around town. It's a really good cause. We want to make sure we help that. The second one I'm going to read to you is this is for the community dining room. It's called the Shoreline Experience Gift Card Raffle Fundraiser. It's for the community dining room. $16,000 in gift cards and certificates have been donated from businesses. There's 28 prizes. In total, 3 grand prizes valued at $3,500 each, which are $1,500 in gift cards and a photography package. One prize is a full beauty experience package, and there's a bunch of other gift cards being done. So that is to benefit the community dining room. That drawing is on October 16th at Bishop's Orchard. You don't need to be there, but I'm going to post on Brantford 7 the ways to get these. They're $20 tickets for this raffle. You can buy them through the CDR. You can Venmo at Community Dining Room. If you have Venmo, at the symbol, Community Dining Room, and click on the business tab, include your phone number and email, and there's a link here. So we'll put that up as well. Throw $20 at that if you can. Good luck winning some things there, but the Community Dining Room is, the interesting thing about the Community Dining Room is people think it's just Brantford. It's not. It's the entire shoreline, and it does an awful lot of good things. We want to support that as well. And the third one was from the animal shelter. The animal shelter is getting a matching grant. I need to find this. A matching grant to make the building more sustainable. So I'm going to read this directly from the, part of that Wayne Cook crowd that was fighting the animal shelter, saying it was taken over by the green cult and all energy efficiency, which I don't see a problem with, but whatever. It really wasn't. There were some energy efficient aspects to it, but there were other aspects that could be done. So I'm going to read this from the Dan Cosgrove Animal Shelter. It says, "We need your help. You have a once-in-a-lifetime chance to help us make our new animal shelter as close to net zero as possible. Net zero is the amount of energy expended versus what comes in. We have until December 6th to raise $15,000, which we matched 1-to-1 by Sustainable Connecticut for a total of $30,000. So for every dollar we raise, up to $30,000, it's matched by Sustainable Connecticut. Net zero means that our building will be self-sustaining and able to produce its own energy. The funds we raise will support things like high-energy LED lighting, high-performance insulation, heat pumps, and building envelope technology. We're hoping to be the first net zero animal shelter in the country, and you can help. And so there's a link to that as well. I will put that up. So over the next couple hours, next 24 hours or so, I will put all three of these fundraisers on Branford 7. Please support, if you can, all good causes. I'm not telling you to pick one over the other. If you could do all three, great. But they're all good causes. So I want to make sure I get word out there. To all saying hi, how are you? Joan and Justin and Paulina and Elizabeth, good to be back. And I hope everyone had a great weekend. Okay, a couple of things to talk about today that have kind of jumped out at me over. We're going to focus on Branford. The next week or so will be basically on Branford. We will get around to talking about probably next week the infrastructure bill, the either $1.5 or $3.5 trillion bill being talked about in Washington, and that has significant impacts on us. Granted, Branford's hoping to apply for some things that an infrastructure bill. If you follow us on stocks, I own stocks that are heavily impacted by that infrastructure bill, and you may as well. And so it's a worthwhile conversation to have. It's being held up primarily inside the Democratic Party, the far left versus the moderates. And it's an interesting debate. We will go over that in more detail in a future podcast. As for local issues, last week I talked about and I wrote an article about our tax collector. And I'm asked on a very regular basis what bias is in media. And I go through this. So this year I've endorsed a Republican for first selectman. Democrats say I'm a far right Republican. Last year I supported pretty much all the Democrats on the ticket. Republicans were mad about that, and I'm biased for that. So there is no way in media not to be biased in any way, shape, or form, at least in other people's minds. But the real bias in media isn't about the words that are written. You know, people always say, years ago we had Walter Cronkite, and he just read the facts, and he just told the news. And in that statement is an enormous amount of ignorance, because before the hour news or the half-hour news that he gave at 5:30 or 6, whatever it was, and he so-called read the facts, there was 10, 12 hours of producers and writers and journalists and the host of the show discussing what should be on that show. The bias in media isn't what's said on air. It can be, but the real bias in media is what is decided to be covered. Do we give something enough credibility in our minds or to our audience that we actually spend time and resources covering this matter? And I gave the example today, I posted this to my personal Facebook page, that 2 weeks ago I wrote about Amazon coming. And I didn't have any inside information on that. I actually went to an economic development meeting, listened to their presentation, wrote the article. Pretty basic stuff, nothing earth-shattering. It's probably a good idea. They've done a lot of research. It makes sense for that to happen. But that's kind of a click article, right? So I think we were read, 6,000 or 7,000 times. And immediately the Branford Patch jumped on it. Soon after, the New Haven Register jumped on it. The Connecticut Branford Sound, or the Sound, got on it, which is Shore Publishing, which is owned by The Day. And they all jumped on that story. And that makes sense. It has a public interest story, what have you. But then we get to the tax collector story. And I wrote last week that an independent auditor, so it's an audit done, run by the state. It's not decorated for Halloween. That's just my normal Christmas lights. I think because it's dark, it has an orange tinge, but it's not. It's just the same lights. But it's just holidays. We're getting the holiday season. I have, for the first, 30-something years of my life, I didn't celebrate holidays. I'm going to make up for lost time. So I might celebrate 7 or 8 Christmases this year, 3 or 4 Halloweens, whatever. I'm just going to have some fun with it. You're welcome to celebrate with me. Back to the tax collector thing. So the story was pretty simple. An independent auditor sanctioned by the state's Office of Policy and Management, the state, those people are put in there by the governor, the Democratic governor. They do audits of towns and they look over the town. The real purpose of those audits is to make sure the reporting is accurate, that the information going into reports is accurate and unbiased. And in doing it, they found the town was great, except for one department. And that was that of the tax collector. And what they found was pretty serious. And I can tell you the conversations now with officials is criminality. Is how serious is this? It appears, according to the audit, that payments were made and the dates on those payments were changed internally to avoid being past deadline dates and avoid interest charges. There's more involved. There have been complaints in that department for some time. There have been issues in that department since this tax collector was in place. The town, and you know what, you can say I'm for Cosgrove, but I'll give him credit. He never once publicly demeaned her. Instead, he got her help. They hired multiple consultants. They hired the former tax collector to come back on a consulting basis to help out. They added staff. They hired another consultant to help out, to try to give them a chance to get it together, to get this tax collector. Now, before this person was in office, Joanne Cleary was there, and it was a model of efficiency. Joanne Cleary was spectacular. Democratic, spectacular in her job. In this case, it didn't work well. This may not be the perfect fit for that department. There's issues there. There's issues with the employees there. I think the employees have issues with leadership there. Whatever. The accusation, according to the Office of Policy Management, is a serious accusation. I did not write that before it was public. I did not have inside information. I knew there were some questions. I had talked to staff, and I knew there were some serious issues in that department. But before it was documented, I didn't see it. The Board of Finance meeting minutes agenda came out, and part of the agenda when it comes out are documents that support that agenda. They were going to hear that report. That audit report was for the Board of Finance. They were going to hear that report. Therefore, that report was attached to those meeting minutes. I read it, kind of had a holy shit moment. This is serious. Wrote the article and put it out. I don't care if you're left, right, male, female, black, or white. An elected member of a tax collection agency who is changing dates on payments or has alleged to have changed dates on payments by an independent audit is newsworthy. It should be covered by everyone. No one else covered it. When I wrote about Amazon, within an hour or two, Patch wrote it. Within a day, Shore Publishing wrote it. Within a day, the Register wrote it. We wrote about public documents in a public hearing at a Board of Finance meeting about an elected official who is changing dates on payments, a serious issue, and not a single word. That's what bias is. That's what bias in media is. Now, I know there's some additional aspects with this candidate. She's a large part of the Black Lives Matter. She's spoken at Black Lives Matter rally. There's been articles written about her that are glowing and praising her as being, I think, the first Black official elected. Her father was a police chief, very likely the first Black police chief in Brantford. There are other issues here. And so if everybody's kind of on eggshells a little bit, I get that. But it shouldn't be the media who's on eggshells. It shouldn't be the media who's shying away from a story that the public should know. If you're going to jump on top of a Costco story or an Amazon story, how do you not jump on top of the actions of an elected official that are being investigated? And it's not a crazy question for an honest person to say, does sex, race, or political party play a role here? This is an African-American woman who has been active in the Black Lives Matter rally, obviously a female and a Democrat. If it was white, male, who's a Republican, would this have been written by the other media outlets by now? That's a fair question. And it's interesting because I'm asked this question a lot about bias, and I answer this all the time. What I try to do is tell you what my biases are. I'm a registered Democrat. I lean left. You know it because we've talked about this stuff. I am a huge Obama fan. Biden, on the fence, but I voted for Biden. But when it comes to socialized medicine, oh yeah, all day long. I think that's the biggest thing you could do for economic development in history. The vast majority of left-leaning ideology, I don't want to say ideology, but of the general concepts of the left today, I agree with for the most part. I also happen to have a fairly good education in economics, and I trade stocks, so I can understand the impacts and sometimes the negative impacts that some of those stances can have economically. So there are two sides to those stories, and I try to look at things objectively. But yes, I lean left. There's no question about that. That's out there. But when I cover the local election, I'll be the first to say I'm endorsing Cosgrove. He's a Republican. And I always say Republican with a big kind of wink because the guy is just not political. He just isn't. He cares about Brantford. I've never seen him talk about Trump. I've never seen him talk about, he deals with the state reps because he has to, but that's it. But that's where our biases are. That these people have chosen not to cover this story for whatever reason. They've chosen to avoid the story for whatever reason. And we know they can very quickly jump on a story because it took them no time at all when I wrote that Amazon was coming that they wrote that story. Jack's comment, I think what people are referring to when they reference Cronkite is there seems to be a lot more editorializing and opinion injected in the news today than there was back in Cronkite's days. At least that's where the impression many people have. Okay, I can understand that point. Remember something, though. We're covering a lot more time. So, if I only had a podcast that was 10 minutes long, I would read what I thought was important and get off. But we have to fill in a little more. So I will try to say on this podcast, here are the facts of this case, and here's my analysis of that. Now then CNN came along, right? And that was 24 hours a day, which is, you got to fill in 24 hours. You can't just keep running. Remember when SportsCenter, like they would start at 4 a.m. It was the same hour show over and over and over again. That's hard to do because you lose audience. At some point, nobody wants to see it anymore. So then it becomes, let's add analysis. Let's get experts on. Let's make it grow. So fill that time. Cronkite had to fill in, a half hour, an hour. Today, they're filling in 24 hours constantly. And now we don't just have CNN. We have 35 of these news channels. And because we are online, we have millions of voices that are looking to fill in time. The issue of bias is nobody ever just came on and read the facts. Because the facts were determined in that 10, 12 hours before the show went live. A producer determined what show went on and what show didn't. I have to determine at times, and usually I'm okay, I have to determine at times what to talk about. And there may be 3 or 4 stories I'm thinking about throughout the day, and I'm taking notes on, and I'm researching throughout the day and decide, okay, we're going to talk about this. And that is naturally what I give more import to. I decided what to spend time, and you decided to listen to me decide which ones were important, which ones weren't for that day. That's what's happening. But how in the world is an elected official with an independent report that showed she did something at the very least extremely questionable? Then the Board of Finance, led by a Democrat, by the way, decides to start a committee between him, the town attorney, and the finance director to look into the department and look at ways to make it better and to improve what's going on down there. That got no coverage. At the same time, the person leading the Democratic campaign is the press agent for the Senate Democrats. That's bias, man. That's just crazy. That's nuts. No one's covered it. We will. And I want to assure you that had the person been a Democrat, white, black, green, blue, male, female, Democrat, Republican, I would have covered it the same way. It's crazy that we're at this point. That said, I want to switch a little bit because I have said for a long time that the current administration, the Cosgrove administration, is the most environmentally friendly administration I've ever seen in this town. And part of that has been Megan, it's a little late. We could do it tomorrow. You know what? All right, so we had some technical. Megan, why don't you click the link again? Megan DeLucia is commenting. She's a candidate for Board of Education. We can go a little long. Let's have you on, Megan. If you can log in and come on, we can talk. We can talk tonight. If not, and you're welcome to do it tomorrow if you'd like to. I'll leave that up to you. But if you didn't see the letters in the sound, and if you just really impressive, because these aren't just Democrats writing this. I'm going to go to that website. I don't go to the sound often, and somebody linked these to me, and I said, holy God. All right, so we'll get to those tomorrow. They're just glowing environmental letters from far left Democrats on Jamie Cosgrove. I suggest you go read them. We may even link to those at some point. We'll talk about those more tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to have Megan on, and she's a candidate for the Board of Education. I have never talked to Megan. So you're getting the first interactions I've ever had with her. I don't know. I've never met her. Like some candidates I've covered for the last couple of years or I've known in the past. So I'm going to bring her on now, and we will have a conversation with Megan. Megan, how are you?
Hold on. Let's see if I can find the...
I can hear you.
I can't hear you.
You can hear me?
I can't. Oh.
Got to be a volume button. It's okay. Nothing. So this might just be a sneak peek of Megan today. Nothing?
I'm trying to get the headphones.
Okay, we'll give it a second here. I'm going to go back and read, just pull up Shirley McCarthy, who's active. The name that really jumped out at me here was, all the names for Brockett are basically expected, right? The left. Kate Galambos was someone who was as anti-Costco as it can get. And, we had Tom Brockett go to the Tabor property and talk about how bad the Tabor property was, and it was a dump and all this other stuff. And here's a letter from Kate Galambos. One of Brantford's many attractions is the pedestrian walkway at Chet's Pond. Especially remarkable is the fact that the walkway is wheelchair accessible. This is probably one of the few places in the state where a wheelchair-bound person can experience flora and fauna views, fresh air during a pleasant walk through the landscape. Thanks to Jamie Cosgrove and the town of Brantford for making Chet's Pond such an enjoyable destination. That is Kate Galambos. Now, I've been very critical of her in the past, and quite frankly, it was deserved. She was part of that group that fought Costco and fought a bunch of development in town. That said, I have respect for people who can disagree on things and then also give credit where credit is due. And she clearly didn't agree with Cosgrove when it came to Costco at exit 56. And she may not agree with him in the future when he's for Costco at exit 56. But giving credit where credit is due for what's happening. We had Tom Brockett, Cosgrove's opponent, stand on the Tabor property and say what a dump and where he's going to fix it. And then we have Democrats who are left-leaning Democrats writing letters, public letters with their name attached, not anonymous comments, saying what a great job Jamie Cosgrove did. That tells you everything. That's huge. And my respect for her as a person has just grown because that's what it should be. You should be able to have disagreements with people, but then also give them credit where credit is due. There's a couple more in here. There's 3 or 4 of these letters. We'll work to get Megan on tomorrow, by the way. We will do that. But Shirley McCarthy, I've known her for a long time, very left. I would like to share my experience working with James Cosgrove, having chaired the Community Forest Commission and now the Green Energy Ad Hoc Committee. Jamie Cosgrove is a pleasure to work with. He's always approachable, kind, open-minded, honest, innovative, and wise. He listens, is empathetic, and truly cares about Brantford. He is very willing to work across the aisle to do the right thing. By the way, Shirley, he's married, so just to let you know. He's also humble. I happened to drive to the community house last December, and there he was by himself in the parking lot in the rain, loading a truck with food for needy families. I want to take a picture to show what a good guy he is, but he said no. I will tell you personal experiences from that, but Jamie Cosgrove has not let me take pictures of him doing more things than I can count. Being an older woman physician, like the positive things, when you go to take a picture, he says, please don't. Being an older woman physician, I encountered sexism early in my career. I have never observed any bias from Jamie Cosgrove or any of his interactions with me or others. James Cosgrove is a really good man. Being an ardent environmentalist, I am thrilled that he built the Tabor Solar Farm, reduced energy consumption in the town school buildings by 30%, hired a superb sustainability and compliance manager, created the Clean Energy and Coastal Vulnerability Committees, and contracted with Connecticut Green Bank for solar on 2 schools. With his leadership, Brantford is the first town in Connecticut to do a Heat Smart campaign. He supports the Community Forest Commission's effort to plant a lot of trees, plant natives to support our wildlife, and has taken time out of his extraordinarily busy day to back us up when trying to save a tree from needlessly being cut down. Being a Democrat, I am putting my experience ahead of party loyalty. That's why I vote for James Cosgrove for first selectman. I'm also going to say this. The created the Clean Energy and Coastal Vulnerability Committees. Connecticut is the first town in the state to have an actually funded coastal resiliency fund. First one in the state. And we were able to invest that just like any other fund. It took a state law to do that. Cosgrove had to work with Christine Cohen and the legislators to get that done. But the list of green things Cosgrove has done has come with being attacked at times from his own party about it. The green cult, Wayne Cook and his little minions call it, that they're taking over the town. No, good economic development is good environmental policy. More trails, more open space in key areas, not everywhere. I'm not saying protect a giant town green in the middle of Route 1, but open space and good environmental practice is helpful for economic development. It goes hand in hand. It doesn't have to be a separate thing. They don't have to be at odds with each other. And this is just a really, really good letter. And there's a couple of them in here, and I was impressed. I'm impressed by seeing. I'm impressed seeing people who certainly don't lean Republican by any way it means, giving an honest, objective analysis of the first election. Jack, we have a BOE chair pushing for the superintendent against his own board. Is this important news as it's 50% of the town budget? So I'm going to just repeat that. We have a BOE chair pushing for the superintendent against his own board. Isn't this important news as it's 50% of the town budget? So first of all, we are spending the last, 2-3 weeks interviewing candidates for the Board of Education. So I think we're giving it some time. We're making sure that the conversations are had. And I've asked every single one how they felt about Hamlet Hernandez and John Prince. So we're giving it that. I'm not sure what's happening. I did see the agenda for tomorrow night. It does have the contract on there. It is my feeling that Board of Ed members would like, in general, for this to be pushed to after the election. I asked a few members about that. I don't know what will happen in that meeting. John Prince is a Hamlet guy, and there's no question. I'm going to say this. We have to be balanced. Prince isn't going anywhere. So even if he's not the chairman going forward, he'll still be on the Board of Education. But he's a Hamlet guy. It is what he is. I don't think he would deny that. I think he would tell you he's being objective, but he's a Hamlet guy. And so the question is, are there other members on the board to balance that out? I don't know. That's the fundamental question of the Board of Education. Do we go with the mentality of iron sharpens iron, that we have, Hamlet on one side and the Board of Ed on the other side, and by working off each other, and they sharpen each other? Or is it the Board of Ed basically follows and supports what what the superintendent has to say? Those are two very different beliefs on how a Board of Ed should work. And they're legit questions. I don't know the answer to that. That's why I'm asking other members what their answer is to that, and their candidates are what the answer is to that, what their viewpoint is on that. Because I'm one of those people who likes people who disagree with me. Like, I want to have people who challenge what I think. I'm not assholes, not people who are fighting just to fight, but people who stop and make you think differently. I want questions that are unique. But I don't want to surround myself with just people, and I block people who are assholes. But if you are someone that disagrees with what I have to say and you have a valid opinion, I want to hear it. I want to be made to think differently. I want to be challenged. That's the question for our Board of Education right now. Do we have a board that challenges the superintendent? Or is their job primarily support of the superintendent? That's the fundamental question these candidates have to answer. And that's what we're trying to get to in these. So I don't think we're avoiding talking about that. And certainly based on what happens tomorrow night, we'll end up probably talking about that Thursday. We have Laura Troidel on, who is no novice when it comes to getting involved in education issues. When I first started in Branford, she was getting involved in the math program called Investigation. She was quite vocal. In fact, her and I had some differences on my coverage at that time. So she will be no short of opinions on what she thinks about the education system. And it'll be interesting to hear what she has to say on Thursday. But we will certainly cover that and talk about that depending on what happens at the next Board of Ed meeting. So yes, Prince is a Hamlet guy. It is what it is. Okay, we'll leave it there for now. We'll figure out Megan tomorrow. We're going to make sure she gets on. I want to hear what she has to say. I want to meet her. I want to have a conversation with her. I think everyone should. And then we will go from there. But interesting, it really struck me that we have a situation That is serious in our tax office. Our tax office is not being run the right way. It's been 4 years. More money has been spent there for more staff, for more consulting than was needed previously. The town has not significantly grown. We didn't have a 10% increase in taxpayers. When the previous person, a Democratic female, was in there, it was fine. It just may be that this person isn't qualified to handle this job. Doesn't mean she's not qualified to handle something else. I very likely may not be qualified to handle it either. It may not be where I belong. But for no media to cover, whether I'd covered it or not, it's still public at public meetings. It's still on the town website. It's still publicly accessible documents. So nobody to go near that topic for whatever reason, race, sex, I don't know, political party, I don't know. But it should raise questions by every single person watching the local election and local meeting. That said, tomorrow night, we will be back on at 4 o'clock. And I'm 99% sure we'll have Megan and we'll figure out the situation with her computer, sound, microphone. That's it. Thursday is Laura Troidel. We'll have one more they have to schedule, and hopefully we'll get to that next week. That said, guys, I hope you have a great night. I will see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a good one.